Well, hello everyone, and welcome to a new video. In today's lesson, we are going to start talking about the syntax of PHP. Now, in the last week, we talked about how do you prepare your web server to host a PHP file and how do you run it. It wasn't that easy going through all the configurations and changes you're going to have to apply to your AWS EC2 web server, but we managed to get that done. And right now, everybody should have their own web server running with no problems. Today, we're going to go through the syntax. We're going to learn how do you write code in PHP. This is going to be the first video. There will be a second video. And then after that, we're going to start talking about applications. And we're just going to keep adding more and more elements to our knowledge about PHP. So a good portion of the coming videos is going to be all about the syntax, so we can master that part. Once we're done with the syntax, we're going to start talking about real-life applications. Now, I do have my server running. Let me just go and show you. This is my server. It's running, and this is my website that I created. It's just printing the word test. Now, if I navigate through that, so change directory. Oops, I need to refresh the page. Just wait for it a little bit. Here we go. Change directory. Let's go to the root directory. Now change directory. We'll go var www html. And now if I list, you will see that there is an index PHP file. Now if I cat that index file, you'll see that I do have the basic structure of an HTML file, and I have this PHP section where I'm echoing a test word surrounding it with the h1 heading tags. And that's pretty much what that page is all about. Now, if I run it, this is basically what's going to be showing on the screen. Again, this page is not an HTML. This course story is not, or these videos are not an HTML and CSS. I don't care about that part, at least for now, at least. But later on, we're going to start going back through some HTML and CSS elements. So we do have everything running with no problems. And now we can move to what we're going to be covering today. There are two ways to test. What I'm going to be doing, is I'm going to use Notepad to demonstrate the coding part, the typing part, and then I'm going to take it to the server for the implementation part. And I do have a list of topics that we're going to cover today, how we're going to embed a PHP in an HTML. This is something I think you already guys know. We're going to talk about the tags of PHP. Then we're going to talk about PHP statements. What does that mean? And then we're going to talk about the white space and the comments. How do you write a comment? And then we're going to talk about adding a dynamic content. We're going to talk about functions in general. We're going to talk about the date function specifically. We're going to talk about variables and how do you have access to variables? How do you use variables? We're going to talk about strings and how do we use strings. We talk about, again, variables and literals, understand identifiers, and then we're going to talk about types of variables. We're going to understand the PHP data types. We're going to talk about understanding the type of strengths. We're going to talk about the casting. There's a G here missing. And then we're going to know how do we create and declare constants. And then we're going to talk about and understand the variable scope. So it's a long list of topics to cover. We're going to go one by one. Some of them will take really short time. Some of them will need a little bit longer time to cover. So first thing first, we're going to talk about how do we embed and how do we include a PHP in our page. Number one, this is what you should understand. And let me just go back to the page. By default, when you install Apache on a computer, that computer is going to be converted to, it's not going to be converted, but it's going to act as a web server. And there is a folder, as we know, in every web server where you need to have a page inside it, and that page need to have a specific name. So when you just type the IP address of that server, automatically, because it's a web server, is going to go to that folder and is going to run that file. Now, by default, if you don't want to include any PHP, that file should be index.html. But since we want to have PHP content here, then we must have it called a different name. And that name is basically index.php. Okay, so that's the file that I have in my computer, in my server. And if I go here, you can see here that the folder itself, this is the URL, the path to that folder, variable, or sorry, var www.html. And inside this HTML, I have this file called index.php. Now, again, when you're going to write the index, when you write the IP address of your server, automatically that index file is going to be executed. So what do we have inside that index file or PHP file? Well, the idea is very simple. It's just like any HTML page that you created in the past. So it will include those default tags. The first one is to declare that this file is actually an HTML file. Then you're going to have the HTML open tag, close tag. So this is basically your website or web page. You will have the head section and you'll have the body section. Now, just like any HTML page, all the tags that you know about could be included here with no problems. I am not going to spend time talking about these tags. My main focus is going to be PHP. And every once in a while, whenever we need to go back and see, into some of the HTML tags, we're going to do that for sure. Now that we know this is the structure of the page, we need to move on and talk about the PHP tag. It's supposed to be tag. Now, there's an old style and there's a new style. Now, I don't want to get you confused with the old style, but usually we start with typing script, and then you decide what is the type of that script. Sorry. And usually you type PHP, and again, this is the old style, and then you go here and you close that script. Now again, we don't do that anymore. This is not how PHP should be embedded in your HTML file. But before I said that, again, these are the rules that we know from HTML class that you took before. Anything you want to see in your page should be inside the body. That doesn't mean that we're not going to have anything to do or to put inside the head. We will do that later. But for now, if you want to see any content on the page of your web page or website, it has to be inside the body. Now, the tag that we use for PHP is very simple. All you have to do is to start with, it's a single tag, by the way. Start with a question mark, type PHP, and then you go down and you close that tag. And here it is. This is the space where you're going to actually write your PHP section. This is extremely important to tell that the server that whatever you're going to see between this opening and this closing here is supposed to be processed by the PHP engine. So what does that mean? If you come here and you type any PHP code, the compiler will not understand that this is a PHP and will just print it as it is. So that's why it's important to tell the compiler, or to tell the server, that whatever you have between this area here and this area here is actually my PHP code. So this is, again, some of the fundamentals and the basics of PHP that you need to understand before you start writing and completing any task or project. Now, the third section here, again, remember those first few sections, I'm going to go through them really, really fast. The third section is statements. Now, this is extremely important to understand about PHP, and it's basically something related to a lot of other programming languages. What are you going to do? You're going to write statements. Now, statements, think about them as a sequence of instructions that you, the programmer, are going to provide for the server to follow. This is the communication between you, the owner of this website, and the server. This is how you issue orders to the server. So you're going to provide the server with statements. Now, it's not going to be a single statement. Usually, it's multiple statements. One of the very important topics here, which is very, very important again, is to tell the to tell the server where is the end of each statement. Otherwise, if you just don't tell the server about the end of each statement, the server is basically going to read them as a single statement. Now, this is extremely important, and I'm going to show you an example about that in a sec. But again, how do I tell the server that this here is the end of the statement? Basically, in PHP, we use semicolon as the end of each statement. And this is one of the reasons that you may get a lot of errors. is that you forget to include that semicolon. So let me just show you an example here. Before we do anything, we have one statement that we talked about last week, which is echo. Now, if I go and type echo here is a function that has one job, is to print whatever you're going to put between those single quotations in the screen. Now, it's very important, again, here to put the semicolon here. And then if I want to input something else, I can come here and say echo, and I will just do another one. For example, I will just type line 1, and this is going to be line 2. Now, again, this here is a statement. This here is a statement. How does the server recognize that these are two statements? Not because they're underneath each other. No, that's not the reason why. It's because of this semicolon. The semicolon here is basically telling the server that this here is a statement and this here is a statement by itself. Okay, now if I take those two lines, for the server, this looks like exactly like this line. This is how the server is going to interpret it. For a simple reason, because servers, they don't recognize white spaces. So again, if I put, let's say, those spaces all the way, or if I go to the next line, for the server, this area here after this single quotation is basically doesn't exist until you get to this echo. So whether you have them this way, or this way, or this way, for the server will look at them as a single statement because PHP doesn't recognize white spaces. White spaces have no meaning for PHP. And by white spaces, I'm talking about this area here. I'm talking about this area here. I'm talking about this area here. The only way that make the PHP work with no problem is basically to have those semicolons. This way, the server will understand that this here is line number 1 and this here is line number 2. Now let's go ahead and demonstrate that using the server that we have. So I do have my PHP file here. Let's just go ahead and of course, I have to refresh this page every once in a while. There's a new technique or new way that we can have access to the server without the need to go through this. I'm going to talk about it in the future, but you don't have to worry about it now. Change directory var www HTML. And now I'm just going to go nano index PHP. So I'm going to go down and let me update this page. I'm going to take this and put line 1. Now don't be surprised about what you're going to see. And let's just go ahead and do echo line 2 semicolon. So I do have my 2 semicolons. Now let's save it. Control X. Yes, I want to save it. Let's go back to the page and refresh it. Now look what I have here. Line 1, line 2 next to each other. Okay? Why am I having line 1, line 2 next to each other, even though I'm putting I'm going to the next line? Because again, I'm not telling the compiler to go to the next line, so this is not going to work here. What if I want to fix this? Of course, there's multiple ways to fix that, but for now, we can come here and surround those elements, for example, by paragraph. Let's go H1 here. And let's close this one, H1. Let's do the same thing here, but let's go H2 or H3. And let's go here and put H3. Now, what you need to understand here, and this is extremely important, is even though I'm putting H1 and H3 here, those are HTML tags, when you're going to view them on your browser, the browser is going to understand that, oh, those are tags that I'm supposed to interpret and change them basically based on whatever H1 and H3 are. So let me just Control X this now, save it. Now if I go refresh my page, oh, that didn't work for some reason. Didn't I save it? Okay, H1, H1, H3, H3. For some reason, wait a minute, it looks like I didn't save it. Yep, I didn't. Let's see here. Yep, here we go. So here it is H1 and here's line 1 and line 2. So this basically would tell you Let me just go ahead and take those semicolons just to show you what's going to happen if we do that. So let's go here. So I took away those semicolons. Now let's Control X. Let's save it. Press Enter. Now let's refresh the page, and look what just happened. There's a problem again. There was an error, and it's called here HTTP error 500. That's the code of that error, and for some reason, that's what I'm getting here. So you can see here that how important it is to tell the compiler about the beginning and the end of a statement. Now let me just go ahead and demonstrate again the value of those white spaces. So let's go ahead and put those semicolons back again. And let me show you what if I put it next to each other. Okay, Control X, yes, save it. Let's go refresh the page, and here we go, it's back again. So what is this telling me? This is telling me basically you can actually put all your lines of PHP line code next to each other in a single line, and it's still going to work as long as you take care of that semicolon to tell the server that this is the end of each statement. What else I can do? Let me just show you that. If I go here, and I'm just going to do something a little bit crazy, but it's okay. I'm going to put a lot of spaces. I don't know what's going on here, but I'm just going to put it that way. Okay, let me save it. Control X. I hope I'm not messing with it. And let me just refresh the page. Oh, I think I accidentally added a backslash here. But again, it's still working. Now let me go back. And now it's my job to try to figure out how do I put it back. That's a lot of spaces. Let me just go all the way here. And here we go. So let me I put it back the way it should be. And then let's go ahead and view the page again. Oh, did I save it? I think I did save it, but oh, here it is. This is the slash that comes out of nowhere. Let me just go ahead and fix that. Control X, Y, and let's go back here. And here we go. So those are the first part that I was talking about now. How do you embed PHP? What is a tag, HTML? What is a statement? We talked about white space. Now we're going to start talking about comments. So comments. What do we mean by comments? Well, comments in any programming language, not only just PHP, it's a space inside your page or your file where you can write something, and that something is going to be ignored by the server in PHP case. The PHP engine basically is going to ignore these comments. It's going to act like they do not exist. Now, before I show you how do you write a comment, we need to understand what is the point of writing a comment. Well, writing a comment for many reasons. One of them for documentation. You created this page. You want to document that you're the one who created it. You're the owner of that page. So that's what you do usually. Sometimes your code is a little bit complicated, and you want to provide a space in that text file to explain what you try to do here, just in case somebody came after you and wanted to read what you did. So they will have an idea, but instead of just looking at a code and just trying to understand what's going on there, you can use a comment to pass some explanation to them, telling them what exactly you've been doing here. You can also leave notes to yourself or to your colleagues. For example, I've been working on this project for a week, and then I'm going to take, let's say, a break for 3 or 4 days. And when I'm going to come back, it will be very helpful if you have a comment there telling you or reminding yourself about what was the last thing you did last week. The moment you read that line, oh, this is going to remind you about what you've been doing, and that will be a little bit helpful. So the question now is, how do we add comments? Well, there are 3 ways to add comments. Oh, I forgot one thing. Also, if you have a piece of code and you're not sure if this code will work or not, instead of deleting it and then after that realizing that you need it, you can convert that code to a comment to be ignored by the PHP engine. And then let's say after 1 week or 2 or 3, you realize that, oh, yeah, I really don't need it. You can delete it. Or maybe after 2 or 3 weeks, you will realize, oh, this is very, very important. Thank God I didn't actually delete it, so I can actually reuse it by just taking the comment section away from it. So the question now I'm going to try to answer, how do I create a comment? Well, there are 2 styles of comments, multiple lines comments, and there is a single line comment. To do a multiple line comment, the idea here is very simple. You just start with a backslash asterisk. And as you can see here, everything changed to green. That is just telling you that this part is a comment. And how do I end that section? By doing the opposite. So here it is. I don't know, that's / asterisk and then asterisk / and then in this area here, you can type any comments you want. For example, name Ahmed Nani, and then I'll just put date, and today's 8/23rd, 2021. That's a multiple lines comments, and you can add as much as you want, of course. And remember here, it has to be in this area here. This is a PHP section after all. Now, if I want to add a single line comment, well, there's 2 ways to do that. The first one is basically to type double /. So I will say, here is the starter. Okay. Now, what if I want to do another form of comment using the pound sign here? So here is the end. I pressed insert by accident. Now remember here, those are not statements, so you don't have to put a semicolon. This is just a comment. You're telling me here's the starter and here's the end. Using a double / and or using a pound. This is again just a single line statement. Now you need to understand something here. The line that comes after it is going to be treated as a single line, a normal line of PHP. So it's not going to take everything here. Same thing here. Usually, this is how it ends. It's basically, whenever you press enter to go to the next line, that will be the end of that comment. And there's another way to do that by putting this here. Even though, look at this, the close tag or the PHP is within the same line of this comment, and that will be applied, of course, for this one as well. But this here is going to tell the PHP engine that this is the end of this comment here at this point. Again, I don't recommend do it that way. Keep it this way. It's a lot better. So here we go. Those are comments. I'm going to show you how do we do it now. If I go back, where is it? Here it is. Let's see if I can actually... Nope, I have to refresh the page. I hate that part. So I have to go and navigate and blah, blah, blah. Let me try to do it in a single line. Var www HTML. And now list, I'm in the right place. Let's go ahead and nano this page. Let's go and add a comment in this area. Let's just call a name Ahmed. And then in this area here, I'm going to put start. And then in this area here, I'm going to put pound end. I'll put a space. Well, let's see if that's going to work. Control X. Yes. Close. Now I saved it. And you can see here, I don't see any change because the lines are all going to be ignored. So here we go. This is what we mean by comments. Now, let's move on and talk about dynamic content. Now, there are multiple ways to add a dynamic content to your page. And just again, to explain what do we mean by dynamic content, we mean how do I make my page look different every time I interact with it. It's not about adding moving objects. No, it's about adding content that change. And we are going to have a lot of examples during the semester, but we will start with a very, very simple one, which is how do I show the date and the time whenever I run this page. Now, of course, there are a lot of tools. I'm going to show you the first one, and then I'm going to explain what it is, and all of that is going to go under those three sections here. How do you add a content, dynamic content, and how do we call functions, and what is the date function itself. Now, the idea here is very simple. You need to understand this, and we're going to talk about it a lot in details. Most of the time, you, as a programmer, or a web or a PHP scripter or programmer, you are going to use tools that has been already created by someone else. And those tools are available for you free. And it's really, really you are encouraged to use them as much as possible. Those tools basically will save you a lot of time and a lot of headache. So your job is basically to learn about those tools, and you need to know that they do exist, and they do exist actually for you to use them. So that will save you a lot of time and a lot of headache, as I said. For example, you have a website, you're selling your product, and in this website, you decided that whenever somebody's going to purchase something, you want to show them the time they made that purchase. Now, that basically means you need to find a way that could help you figuring out what is the time at the moment that somebody was running this page or clicked on a link. And to do that, we have what we call functions. Functions is basically a predefined piece of code stored somewhere in your server, and you don't need to go into the details of what's inside that server, that function. All you just need to learn is how do you use it. For example, I'm going to go ahead and do this here. Echo, and I'm going to create a paragraph. Let's go paragraph here. And in this paragraph, let me just put single quotation here. In this paragraph, I say your order is processed at. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a space here, close the single quotation, and put a semicolon. And I'm going to go and do an echo again in this area here. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to call a function. Now, I don't have to put the quotation here. Date. And in this date here, you're going to have to type what we call arguments. Arguments basically are some sort of information. You're going to pass it to that function to use. I'm going to explain that in a second. So we're going to go h:"I", and then in this area here, we're just going to type J, S, I think it should be uppercase S, F, and Y. Now, of course, I don't blame you if you are telling me I have no idea what's going on here. That's okay. Let me just go ahead and type echo, and I'm going to close the paragraph tab. So let's got those three lines to understand what's going on. Now, for the first part here, this is me showing this message. Your order is processed at. Now, I decided not to close the tag here because I want the results of this to be next after the at, and then after that, I'm going to close it. Now, since we're talking about this, let me just go ahead and go into a little bit of details here. This single quotation is telling you that whatever you have between those two single quotations, print them on the screen as they are. The compiler, of course, the browser will realize, oh, this is a paragraph, so I know what to do with paragraphs, so it's not going to print the paragraph. So that will be the first thing. Now, after that, you went to the next line here, and this is what we call a function. Now, the function here, it's called date. Function date has a responsibility of providing you the date, time, day, month, year. Now, there's a default way that the function date is going to provide you with those type of information, but I want it to be a little bit formatted. So H, as you can see here, for hours, I is going to be for minutes. So I'm going to be seeing hours and minutes separated with the colon. And the format of the hour is going to be 24. So you have to understand that part. So if it's, for example, 1 a.m., you will see 0.1. J here and S, let me just start with the Y. Y is for the year. F, surprisingly, is for the month. I don't know why. And then J and S is to show you the day. Now the day, for example, let's say is 12th in the month. So it's going to be 1, 2, TH. Okay, that's what the JS is all about. This is one of the parts that you may not understand. Why don't you just use letters that make sense? But again, those letters probably are reserved for different purposes. So that's why we have to go with JS. For example, if it's the 3rd of the month, so you will see 3 followed by RD, and then you'll see this part. Now let me see if I actually can copy this section and add it to my page here. Nope, it's not going to let me do it again. Let's go ahead and refresh. I'm going to show you later that there's a way better than this to save myself a lot of time. So let me just go ahead and do that. Change directory, colon, var, www, HTML. This is me navigating directly to that file. And now I can go ahead and type nano, the index. I just hope that I can actually paste it here. Let me see. Oh, that worked. Okay, but it looks like I messed it up a little bit. No, not really. Let's go ahead and try to fix it. Yep, it was a little bit messed up. I'm going to try to fix it. Yeah, this is not the right place for this body or this echo. So let's go ahead and it's not a good idea to actually paste it from. So this is not supposed to be here. Semicolon. Let's put this back. And then I need to actually close. Where's question mark? This is the end of it. Now I have to take that out. Again, I really have no idea why did it does. Maybe I put it in the wrong place. And now I have to go ahead and close the body. Okay, hopefully this will work with no problem. But again, let's just put this here. I just stated here that I'm going to go with showing this message and try to print the date. And then I'm going to go to the next line with this. Let's Control X that. Y, enter. And let's go ahead and try to refresh this page. And here we go. So your order is processed at 15. Well, that's not right because it's 11 right now. 45. 3rd of August 2021. Okay, now you may wonder, why is it not showing me the right time? This basically means, and I think I showed you that before, but there is that php.info file where you're going to have to go and change the time there. So I'm going to try to fix that later, but again, for now, I don't care about that. I'm just going to assume it's actually 3 point. I need to go and I'm going to show you how to do that later, but for now, we just need to know that it worked, but it's not showing me the correct time because there's some configuration that need to be actually fixed or updated. But again, it worked, as you can see here. So let me go back to the page to try to explain again, what is this? Date by itself. It's a long piece of code in PHP. Somebody wrote before, and they said, they thought, well, a lot of people will actually want to get access to the code. Sorry, to the date, to be part of their page. So what do we do in this case? Well, basically, we need to provide them with a tool that can help you with that. So they took the time to create that long piece of code to show you what is the time and the date. And they just created that. Your job is not to go through all the details that they had to worry about. All you have to do is to worry about, how do I use it? Now, as I said, this is the name of that function, and we're going to use a lot of functions during the semester, so put that in your consideration. Your job is mostly to know the name of the function and to understand what does it come with. Now, the date function itself, I'm not going to go through the details because we're going to have a whole chapter to talk about that later, but I need to tell the format that I want to see on the screen. And this is basically showing you the format that you're going to see on the screen. Now, let me go back to that page. And I want you to pay attention to the minutes right now, because now I'm going to refresh the page and I think this should change. And now it's 6. And that's what we mean by dynamic. Every time you visit the page, that number is going to be different. And that's, again, what we mean by dynamic content. Is basically you include a function here in this case, and that function basically will take responsibility of showing you the time and the date every time somebody will run this piece of code. Now, let me just go to the page. I'm going to stop at this point, and I'm going to come back later because I will need to figure out how do I change that. I know that I need to go to the php.info file to fix it, but again, how do I have access to that file from the server side? That's what I'm going to be doing in the next few minutes, and then I'll get back to show you how you fix it, just in case you had the same problem. Okay, so I was able to figure out, again, I tried to do it the right way, but it didn't work for some reason. I'm going to show you the problem and show you the fix, and I show you that it didn't work for some reason. So I'm going to skip that part, but I'm just going to show you that you can change the time for your Linux system for it to work with no problems as following. If you just go to your command line, and it really doesn't matter what folder or directory you're at, but if you just type sudo date -s and then you write the exact time you want it to be, that should fix it. Now, after I did that, and if I went back to my page that I created, and if I refresh the page, you can see here now it's 11:56, 23rd of August, which is basically exactly what the time right now is. A little bit different. This is 54, but again, that was a fix. Now, the right way to fix that is basically to do the following. I'm not gonna. I tried to do it and it didn't work for some reason, so I'm just going to show you that maybe it will work at your end. I'm missing something here, but what you need to do, you need to go back to the root directory, and then change directory to etc. Now, inside the etc, there's a file called php.ini. So if I just go and list it, you should find it somewhere. Here it is. This is php.ini. Now, if I type sudo nano php.ini, it will show you this text file, which is a huge text file. Now, you can press F6, and then you're going to see the search option here. If you just search for time zone, it will take you to the time zone section. And by default, the time zone section will be commented with a semicolon here. And the default is going to look like this. Like that. And what you have to do basically, and again, this is from books, you have to take that semicolon away. And then after that, you come here and type America. And then Chicago. Again, Central Time, Chicago. So I'm going to go with that. After that, you press Control X. You save your work. You're done. If I go date, again, this is not because I fixed it. It's because of the date that I changed before. But it didn't work. For some reason, I tried this method and it didn't work. So I had to go and just type date -s and I put the date manually. So let's just skip that part for now. And let's move on to one of the most important topics when it comes to PHP. And let me just navigate through to, my PHP file. So I'm going to go www and then HTML. Let's go ls. This is my file, nano, and then index. And here's my file. Now, I did a little bit change into a file comparing to what you saw before. First of all, what I did, I added this section here. Let me see if I can highlight it. I believe, yep, I can highlight it. So here it is. This is PHP underscore ELO, PHP ELO. This ELO basically ends of line. So this will take you to the next line. So just in case this H1 you didn't use it, this will take you to the new line instead of seeing them in the same line. Now, what's very important here about is whenever you want to add multiple elements into a single echo statement, you need to separate them with a dot. So basically the compiler here, the PHP engine is going to show this on the screen, follow that by executing whatever you have here. This basically goes to the next line, same thing here. One thing I also want to mention here, that you can use a double quotation, you can use a single quotation, but later on we're going to talk about the difference between them when we get to that point. Now, let's look at this echo here. Instead of having 3 echoes, I decided to put them under 1 echo. So the first one that you see here is basically for the paragraph. After that, I put dot, so I call the date function here. Follow that with a dot to go to the closing paragraph section. Now, this is not what this section is all about. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you one of the fundamental or the basic applications when it comes to PHP. The whole reason why we have PHP in the first place is basically for this, for the user end to be able to communicate with the server end. So what do I mean by that? Let me just go ahead and show you that. This section here, this index.php file is basically what we call the server side of the website. What I'm going to do, I'm going to create a user or a front end side. So this is just, look at this, front page.html. So it's a simple HTML file. Now what I'm going to do here, and this is extremely important, I'm going to create a form. And again, I'm not going to talk about forms. You should already know what it is. Forms is basically, it's going to generate fields where you can actually type information to be sent to the server. Now, any form need to have 2 main sections. The first one's called method. And in this method, we said we have 2 options. We can go post or you can go get. I'm going to show you if both of them will work. Just to give you an idea, post is a little bit more secure than get. But they're basically going to work the same way. And then after that, this is very important, action. In the action, and I'm pretty sure that when you studied HTML, you didn't pay attention to this action as much as you should. So look what I'm going to do in the action side. I'm going to go to my website, which is this one here. I'm going to copy this, even though it's not a good practice to copy the actual IP address. So I'm going to copy this section here. Copy it. And I'm going to go back to my website and I'm going to put it in the action section. Now what I need to do here, just come here and type http:// or / sorry. Now you can see here http, not s, http, and you put the link for your website, for your PHP file there. Now what I'm going to do here, I'm going to come here and type, let's say, paragraph. Let's say enter your name. And let's close that paragraph. In this area, let's give it a tab. I'm going to put an input type equal text, lowercase t. And very, very important, you're going to have name equal, this is an attribute. And for this name, I'm going to say user name, just like that. Okay, and now after that, I can go ahead and say break line, so we can go to the next line. And then in this area, I'm going to come and create a new input. It's going to be a type. It's going to be a type of submit. Okay, and that will be it. I can put a break line here as well. Now, this is my form, and in this form, let me just run it so you'll see what's going to happen. It's showing me enter your name, and then I'm going to enter my name, and then I'm going to submit it. Now look what I can do. This is extremely important to understand. I'm going to come back to my page. Now before I go to my page and show you what is going to happen, let me explain what is this form. Whatever you're going to type inside that input space that you have, and you click submit, that thing that you type is going to be basically stored inside a space. Think about name here as a box. And you're going to type whatever you're going to type is going to be stored inside that box. That box is going to be basically delivered to your PHP file. And this is the link for that file. So what you need to do, you need to actually get to your PHP file and learn how to use it. So when I'm going to come here and I'm going to do this, very, very important, echo, look what I'm going to say here. Double quotation or single quotation, it doesn't matter. I'm going to say welcome, space, and let me just put it as a paragraph. Or you know what, let's put it as H1. and I put dot. Now look what I'm going to do. I'm going to come here and put a $, underscore, square bracket, post. Okay. Not post. Wait a minute. No. I think nope. Post is supposed to be here after the post. And in this area here, you type the name you have in your page. So you see here in this page, I call the name of the box username. So let me copy that as it is. Oh, I can't copy paste, so let's just go type it here. Username. Now the syntax here is very, very important. You have to actually put it just exactly. The case sensitive. It's a case sensitive, so just exactly how it is. So H1 here, and let's put a semicolon at the end. So what's going to happen here? Let me just go back here. When you are going to type something here, and you're going to click submit, whatever you're going to type here is basically, think about it as a project that's going to be stored and saved inside a box called name. This name box, oh, wait a minute. Yes, this name box is going to be sent to your computer, to the server. And inside the server, this is how you have access to that box, username. So let me just run it to show you what's going to happen. Let me save my work. And let me come here, and I'm going to say, for example, Adam. And I'm going to click submit. And look at this, welcome Adam. Now let me close this page, and let me go back to my page again. Where is it? Here it is. Let me run it again. And this time I'm going to type my name, Ahmed. Submit, and welcome Ahmed. Now, instead of Ahmed and Adam, think about that as your username and password, your credit card information, your details whenever you want to do something online. You want to purchase a car, you want to purchase a Tesla. Whatever you want to do, it's going to be passed to the server using this mechanism. So that's why it's very important to know this mechanism. So if I want to, again, just let's put it this way. This page here, from page, is a computer, it's an HTML file that does exist in my computer system. My current local computer system here, I'm using it. Basically, this file is here. Once I run this page and I click on submit, automatically the data that I entered, which is basically whatever I typed inside that box that's called username, is going to be sent to that page that I created, which is this one. Now, this page itself, which again is located at the server, is going to receive that username, whatever you typed. And when the computer is going to get to this point, and is going to see this command here, a $ underscore post username, is going to replace the username with whatever you actually typed. And again, remember that could be anything you have there. Now, again, let me just put it back this way. If I come here and change this one to be get, then all I have to do here is to go back to my page and change this to be get. We usually go with post. Post is more secure comparing to get. And that's basically how you communicate between the user end and the server end. Now, in the future, it's going to be way more complicated than this. What are we going to do? We're going to create a website in your end. You're going to enter your username and your password. Both of them are going to be sent to the server. The server, the PHP file is going to be connected to a MySQL file, a database management system. In the database management system, there are thousands of username and passwords, and your program PHP is going to search for a match for that username and password. And whenever there's a match, a certain action will be taken. So this part here, this specific part, is one of the most important parts about PHP, because after all, I will tell you, maybe 50% of what PHP is all about is basically forms and variables and passing data between the user end and the server end. Now, the second part is going to be basically going through variables and strings and identifiers and types of variables, and that's what we're going to be covering next. Well, the rest of this class is going to be, this video is going to be about variables and understanding that concept. So I'm going to stop looking at this part, and I'm going to be focusing on this page that we created, and mostly I'm going to be focusing on this page here. Now, one of the things that we need to understand in any programming language is the concept of variables. Variables is basically a space where you're going to store your data in. Now, let's look at this example here. When I'm going to go, if you go back to your page, this one, let me just run it. Whatever you're going to type here, as I said before, is going to be sent to your PHP file. And if you want to have access to whatever that thing that you type, you can have access using this this line here, which is $_post, and then the name that you have in your form, which is this part. Now, this is extremely important to understand when it comes to PHP. This part, it's called a super global variable. Now, super global variable, I don't know if it's too early to talk about that or not, but just to give you an idea, when you have a project and your project is basically, let's say, 100 pages. Now, if in every single page, you will create variables. Those variables for that single page, it's called local. Local basically means when you move from page 1 to page 2, in page 2, you don't know what's going on in page 1. That's why it's local. So every single page will have its own local variables. But this type here, this is called super global. That basically means every single page in your website will be able to have access to it. And since they will have access to it, they basically can change it. Now, this is something you don't want to happen. Whatever you're going to get from the user, you don't want it to be changed. You want to keep it as it is. You might need to change it or modify it somewhere in your project, but you don't want to mess with the original value. So for that reason, and many, many more, we mainly need to have a space, a local space for that page to store whatever that global, super global variable is. And that's what variables are. Now, is that the only reason why we have variables? Of course, no. Variables are used for processing. And again, if you have any background in programming, variables is one of the main principle and basic concepts in programming. You need to have a space to store your data that it will be processed. And variable is the answer. So let me just show you, if I want to modify my code to use variables, what am I supposed to do? So let me just go ahead and navigate all the way back to var www html. Now, let's make sure that I'm in the right place. Now nano index, and here we go. So what I'm going to do now is very basic and fundamentals. What I'm going to say here, I'm going to create a variable. To create a variable, you just need to start with a $, and then after that, you give it a name. For example, name. Or let's put it as past name. And then you put the equal sign, and then you put $_ post, square brackets, and you put user name. And always don't forget the semicolon. Now, whatever this post username is going to be basically copied and is going to be stored inside this past name. Now, what I can do, I can come back down here, and instead of using that super global variable, which is not recommended, I can immediately just come here and type $ past name. Now, let's see if that's going to work. Control X, yes, save it. And I'm going to come here and type, let's say, Juan, for example. Submit, and here it is. It's working perfectly fine. Now, this is going to be a problem. This technique that I just showed you is going to be a problem if I do the following. Let me close this. Let me close this. Let me open the page again. What if I don't type anything? Just click on submit. Of course, you will not see anything here. Okay? So it's recommended. We're going to see that in the future, that usually whenever there's an interaction between the user and the website, and the user is going to enter some information that's supposed to be sent to the server, before you start the process of using the past name, it's better to check if the user actually sent something or not. If the user didn't send anything, just like I did here, you can actually send a message back to the user telling the user, please make sure you enter something, instead of just taking it as it is and go with it. So we're not going to go through that right now. There's a lot of ways we can actually check if the user actually sends something or not, but this is not the scope of this class. We're going to talk about it in the future. So we'll just keep it as simple as what I just showed you here. And of course, you can have as much as inputs you want to send data to the server, and you just need to know that you need to have a variable for each one of those data that's going to be sent to the server. Now, one of the topics that I just already mentioned here, what if you have a mix and match between what we call strings and variables? And here's a case of it. See, this here, it's called literal string. Literal string basically means it's just the data you want to show it on the screen. Okay? And, okay, let me just go back into the page. And whenever you have a mix and match between variables and strings that you want to show on the screen, we basically separate them with the dots. So this is important, very, very important. As you can see here, this is just a message that's going to be shown on the screen. This is a message that's going to be shown on the screen, and this is a variable. And because we have this mix match between those elements, so it's important to understand that this dot here will allow you to actually put different types of elements to be printed on the screen, just like you can see here. Now, with that being said, we need to talk about variables right now. And as you can see here, this is a variable. And in this variable, I'm storing whatever I'm getting from the forms. I can create other types of variables, and let me show you one. For example, my number. And then my number could be anything, 12 point, something like that, semicolon. And let's just call it my number 1. I can create another one, my number 2. And this time I'm going to put, let's say, 100, semicolon. I can put my name. Well, this is not my, but let me just go fix it. And this is my name. What's going on here? And I can put my name on it, for example, semicolon. What else? I can put my answer. My answer. And I can go true or false. Okay, let's just keep it simple and just talk about those variables. Now, let me go and add some spaces here, even though those spaces are not really important because we said PHP will ignore those white spaces, but just to make the code look readable better. Now, what I want you to pay attention to is the following. This here is me declaring a variable. I'm creating a variable. And this variable has what we call an identifier, which is this section that I'm highlighting, which is in this case my number. And this is another variable. This is my identifier, this is my identifier, and this is my identifier. Each one of those identifiers have a value. And to assign a value to a variable, we use the assignment operator. Now pay attention because we have multiple different types of this assignment operator, or this equal symbol here. So pay attention to this one. We're using a single equal symbol here to assign a value to an identifier. Now identifiers themselves, we have some rules that you have to follow. And the rules are, let me just make sure that I get them correctly. You can have that identifier to be as long as you want, but it has to have letters, numbers, and underscore. That's the only thing you can have. You cannot have any, what do they call it? Any special characters, except the $sign that you see. Every single variable or identifier must start with that $sign. And that's what we've been doing so far. So $signs, basically, this is how you declare or create an identifier. Types of data that you can assign to those identifiers are basically, we have many different types. We can go with integers. For example, this part here is an integer. As you can see here, I don't have a decimal point. So number 2, my number 2 is going to hold an integer. My number 1 does have a decimal point here, so this is what we call a float. This is called a string because it's surrounded by a double quotation, so we can put any types of characters here. And this is what we call a Boolean variable because we can store the value of true or false. We're going to learn later what is the point of that. In addition to that, we have identifiers that can store an array. We're going to talk about that later. And we can have objects as an identifier, which we're going to talk about as well later. Now, just to show you how do I use those, I'm going to go down and just try to print them on the screen. So let's go echo. And I'm going to start with my number 1. And I'm going to put dot, and then I'm going to put double quotation, and I'm going to put, let's say, double dash. This is me mixing, matching between those. And then my number 2, and then I'll put a dot, and I'll put double dash again, and I'll put my name, again, my name, and I'll put that, double dashes, and then finally we have my answer. And then I'll put dot, and then I'll put after that PHP underscore end of line, semicolon. Okay, so hopefully this will work with no problem. So let's go ahead and give that a try. Y. And I am going to go back to my original page. And I'm going to go, and this time I'm going to type Steve. And let's submit. And here it is. Well, let's see here. For some reason, I have some issues here. Well, Ahmed showed as it's supposed to be. 1 basically is true. If you put false, it's going to be printed as 0. 100 was shown, but the first one, which is the float number, didn't show what exactly it is. So let me just go and look at my code and see why did that happen. Oh, here it is. Okay. Again, this is what happened if you don't double check. My number, not moo number. So Control X, save it. Let's go back here, refresh the page. Are you sure you want to continue? Let's go back to the page. Steve. Oh, that didn't work. 2. Maybe because I didn't save it. Let's go back again. This time I'm going to go with, let's say, Sam. And now it's working perfectly fine. This is my first number. This is my second number. This is my name. And this is my Boolean variable. Now, if I just go back here, just to show you, if I change this to be false, Control X, Y, save it, and go back, click again, and it's gone now. You don't see it. Let's see, did I misspell false? Yeah, let's see. I don't think so. Yep, it was correct. So you should, I guess 1 is okay, 0 if it's nothing. I need to double check on that. But just to let you know, this is again me creating variables, and this is me showing those variables. Now, I'm almost done, by the way, so let me just go ahead and talking about a little bit more issues here. When it comes to Python, when it comes to PHP, there is one fact that you need to understand, which is a lot of people are not proud of it. And I'm going to show you that. In many programming languages that you know or you already learned about, or you're going to learn in the future, once you create a variable and you assign a value to it, that variable and that data type will be it. What do I mean by that? So, for example, if you look at my number 1 here, and you see that I put 12.89089.98, sorry. That basically is telling me that number 1 is actually a float number. In PHP, what we can do later on during my programming running, I could come here and say my number 1 equal, let's say, DDTTRR. Now let's look at those 2 lines. Here I assign a number to my number 1, and here I'm assigning a different string. to number 1. This is acceptable in PHP, even though it's not recommended to do it, but it's still acceptable and it's going to work. And basically that means, as you can see here, the data type of the variable change depending on what are you trying to assign to it. So when you assign 12.098, that's a what do you call it? Float number. We're going to treat it as a float number. The moment you put those double quotation and assign a value to it, now it's not a float number anymore. Now it's string. Now let me save this just to show you that it's going to work with no problems. Now if I go back here and if I run it, you'll see DDDTTRR, and it's working with no problems. So this is again one of the issues that you need to understand in PHP, that your variables, every variable you create has a data type, but that data type can change as you want. And this is not acceptable in many other programming languages. Once the variable is created and the value assigned to it, then it's going to stuck with that variable data type and it cannot change it. But in PHP, you can actually do that and you can change it. You can change the data type of a variable. Of course, you're not free to do it all the way, but you can do it. For example, let me show you this. If I come, let me just go back here. Casting basically means changing the data type of your variable. So, for example, if you look here to this one, number 2, because I don't have a decimal point here, that's going to be treated as an integer. But what if I don't want that to happen? Here's what I can do. Or let me just put it this way. I can do this. Let me take this. Oh, come on. My computer's frozen. Of course. Uh-oh. What just happened here? Did we lose internet? Problem with the keyword. Let me close this. Close this. Let me go back here, refresh my page. I don't know what just happened here. I'll try to just get connected again. Okay, we were unable to connect an instance. Make sure that you're... Oh, lovely. I was in the middle. I was almost done, and that happened. Okay, let me just go back here. And you know what? No. Let me log out. Try to log in again. Maybe that will fix the problem. H7. I don't think that will fix the problem, but let me just try. EC2. It's running, so it's not complaining about that part. Let me just try to run it. Yep, there's something happened to my server for some reason. It's going to try and try. It's not going to work. Maybe they have an issue from their end, not mine. I'll try to connect again. It's not going to work. I can tell. Maybe we have internet connection issues. Anyway, so where was I? Let me just go ahead and try to explain the rest of this lecture. I was talking about casting. Casting basically means changing the data type of a variable depending, again, just imagine, again, this is a PHP. You know what? I think I have a PHP file here. So let me just go ahead and do that here. This is a variable. Let's call it num1. And num1 equal 12 point something like that. Semicolon. Let's create a new num2. Here's what I can do. If I come here and type 12.98, I can do that. Or I can do this. I can say num1. So whatever the value of num1 is going to be assigned to num2. But what if I don't want it to be a decimal, a float number? What I can do, I can come here and type integer. And that basically will convert this number from a float number to an integer. And then basically it's just going to store 12 inside num2. So this is basically going to be backcasting. Now casting could work, but not between all the variables. So what do I mean by that? Imagine I want to put string here. let's see here, string. When you put a string here, basically what's going to happen is going to take this number as it is, and instead of, it's going to convert it to a string. What does that mean? It means 12.98 is not a value anymore. It's basically the character 1, character 2, character dot, character 9, character 8. So I'm converting it to a string, and so on. So you know that this is how you can convert. We're going to have to go and have a table to be able to understand what type of casting, what to expect from results. To declare a constant. Now, constants are very, very important in PHP, and to declare a constant, you basically need to do this. You come here and type define, and you put in parentheses, and then in this area, you tell me what is the constant you're trying to create. For example, pi, and what is the value you're trying to put to it? 3.14, for example. This is me creating a constant. What does a constant mean? That basically means pi here will hold the value 3.14, and there is no way you can change that. Put that into your mind. Other thing you have to pay attention to, pi that I created in this page, it's a global variable. What does that mean? It means, for example, I created index PHP. If I want to go to another page within my website and I want to use pi, then yes, I can use pi without a problem. Remember here, we said variables are two types. We have local and we have global. Constants are global. Global basically means you have a website, multiple pages, all of them could have access to that global constant. Doesn't matter where you created it. Everyone will have access to it with no problems. The issue that you have to pay attention to here is with local variables, they only access locally within each page independently. I'm going to stop at this point. Understanding the scope of the variables is basically something we're going to cover whenever we have multiple pages, multiple sessions, and we'll see what does that mean. What is the meaning of the scope of the variable? And just to give you an idea of what do I mean by that, if imagine this page and this page both belong to the same website. If I come here and create x equal 100, this is what we call a local variable. I can come here and create another variable, call it x equal, let's say 200. This is basically a local variable in this page, and this is a local variable in page. Even though they share the same name, but they're totally two different variables. That's what we mean by local. Now, if I have a third page, let's say this one, and I want to have access to x, I'm not going to be able to have access to x because x is only accessible here, and this x is only accessible here, and this one I didn't define any x variable, so there is no x here. That's what we mean by local variables. Global variables, on the other hand, for example, this pi, I can have access to it here, I can have access to it here, I can have access to it here, imagining, this is me assuming that all these three pages belong to the same website and they're stored in the same server. I think I've been talking way too long today. I'm going to stop at this point. This will be the end of this video, and we'll continue next week with more syntax rules about PHP.